My brother's smile disappeared the moment the paper touched the table. It didn't fall. It didn't slide. It just stopped in front of him like it had finally reached the place it belonged. The room smelled like rosemary chicken and lemon polish, the same way it always had since we were kids. My mother sat across from me, folding her napkin into precise squares. My father leaned back, chewing slowly, watching Elijah Monroe like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't want the answer to. That's me. Elijah Monroe. 34. Financial analyst. The brother who always did things the right way even when it hurt. Daniel hadn't touched the paper yet. His fingers hovered beside his wine glass, relaxed but not natural. Like someone pretending to be calm in a room that had already turned against him. "What is this?" he asked. His voice was steady. Too steady. I didn't answer. I let the silence sit there, heavy and visible. Because 24 hours earlier, I'd been standing inside a bank I'd trusted for over a decade, staring at a number that didn't belong to my life. $700,000. A loan. In my name. For a car I had never seen. My mother cleared her throat. "Elijah, if this is about money again, this isn't the time." I finally looked at Daniel. He was smiling again. But this time it wasn't confidence. It was recognition. Daniel picked up the paper like it weighed nothing. He didn't rush. That was always his talent. He could stand in the middle of a storm and act like he controlled the weather. He skimmed the first few lines, then leaned back in his chair, letting out a soft laugh. "This is ridiculous," he said, placing it back on the table. My father frowned. "What is it?" Daniel shrugged. "Some bank error." Elijah always panics before asking the right questions. The words landed exactly where he wanted them to. My mother relaxed instantly, nodding like she'd been handed permission to dismiss me. "Elijah," she said gently, "banks make mistakes." I watched Daniel's hand. Not his face. His hand. It rested near the edge of the report, thumb pressed lightly against the corner like he was keeping it from drifting too far away from him. The bank manager's voice echoed in my head. "Come. Apologetic. Careful. The signature matches your records perfectly, Mr. Monroe. Not similar. Not close. Perfectly." I had stared at the copy until the lines blurred. My name. My identity. Given away like it belonged to someone else. Daniel reached for his wine glass. "You should have called me first," he added, his tone almost sympathetic. "I could have saved you the embarrassment." Embarrassment. That word told me everything. Because innocent people don't prepare you for how small you're supposed to feel. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "I did call someone first," I said quietly. Daniel paused mid-sip. I met his eyes. "The police." Daniel picked up the paper like it weighed nothing. He didn't rush. That was always his talent. He could stand in the middle of a storm and act like he controlled the weather. He skimmed the first few lines, then leaned back in his chair, letting out a soft laugh. "This is ridiculous," he said, placing it back on the table. My father frowned. "What is it?" Daniel shrugged. "Some bank error." Elijah always panics before asking the right questions. The words landed exactly where he wanted them to. My mother relaxed instantly, nodding like she'd been handed permission to dismiss me. "Elijah," she said gently, "banks make mistakes." I watched Daniel's hand. Not his face. His hand. It rested near the edge of the report, thumb pressed lightly against the corner like he was keeping it from drifting too far away from him. The bank manager's voice echoed in my head. "Come. Apologetic. Careful. The signature matches your records perfectly, Mr. Monroe. Not similar. Not close. Perfectly." I had stared at the copy until the lines blurred. My name. My identity. Given away like it belonged to someone else. Daniel reached for his wine glass. "You should have called me first," he added, his tone almost sympathetic. "I could have saved you the embarrassment." Embarrassment. That word told me everything. Because innocent people don't prepare you for how small you're supposed to feel. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "I did call someone first," I said quietly. Daniel paused mid-sip. I met his eyes. "The police." "Yesterday morning," I said. Daniel nodded slowly like he was organizing that information somewhere private. Not denying it. Not fighting it. Just adjusting. My father let out a long breath. "This is insane," he muttered. Daniel would never risk his future like that. His future. Not my name. Not my credit. His future. I felt something inside me shift. Not break, just move. Like a door closing gently in a room I'd kept open too long. "The car was delivered 3 months ago," I continued. "Black Aston Martin. registered under a holding address downtown. My mother blinked. Aston, what? Daniel didn't help her. He just watched me now, fully present. I reached into my jacket and pulled out another paper. Not official. Not stamped. Just a printed photograph. I placed it beside the report. It showed Daniel stepping out of the car, sunlight catching the curve of the hood. His hand rested on the roof like it belonged there. Like he'd earned it. No one spoke. My father leaned forward, squinting. That could be anyone. It could, I agreed. Daniel's eyes flicked to mine. For the first time there was no performance. No script. Just calculation. Because he knew what came next. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of something heavier than anger. I didn't come here to accuse you, I said quietly. My mother looked relieved for half a second. Until I finished the sentence. I came here to give you a chance to tell them yourself. Daniel stared at me. And then, slowly, he smiled again. But this time, it wasn't for them. Daniel didn't look at our parents. He looked only at me. It wasn't a brother's look. It was quieter than that. More careful. Like he was trying to remember which version of me he was sitting across from, the one who stayed silent or the one who had just walked in and rearranged the air in the room. You've always been dramatic, Elijah, he said softly. He reached forward and slid the photograph back toward me with 2 fingers, like it was something that didn't belong on his side of the table. That's not proof. That's a moment. My mother nodded immediately. Exactly. Anyone can take a picture. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. Because Daniel wasn't talking to them anymore. He was talking to me. And he was waiting. Waiting to see if I'd hesitate. I didn't. I froze my credit, I said. He blinked. Just once. I also requested the original loan application. The metadata, the submission timestamps, the device ID used to sign it. My father frowned. What does that even mean? It means, I said, keeping my voice steady, the bank knows which phone completed the loan. Silence filled the space between us again. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly around his wine glass. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I noticed, because I'd spent my entire life noticing things about him no one else ever did. I'm sure they'll sort it out, my mother said quickly. These things take time. I looked at Daniel. They already did. His smile faded, not all at once but in pieces. Like something inside him had finally realized the story wasn't his anymore. And for the first time since I arrived, he didn't try to speak. No one reached for their food. The plates sat untouched, steam fading into nothing. Daniel's eyes stayed on the table now, not on me, not on our parents. Just the wood grain, like he could disappear into it if he stared long enough. My father cleared his throat. Elijah, he said carefully, whatever this is, we can handle it as a family. Handle it. The same word he'd used when Daniel crashed his first car at 19. The same word he'd used when Daniel quietly dropped out of college and never told anyone for 6 months. Handle it didn't mean fix it. It meant protect him. I already handled it, I said. My mother's fingers tightened around her napkin. What does that mean? I didn't answer her. I watched Daniel. Because this wasn't about convincing them anymore. It was about whether he understood what I'd finally understood. The detective asked me something yesterday, I said. He asked why I waited 3 months to report it. Daniel's jaw shifted. I remembered standing in that office, the hum of fluorescent lights above me, the weight of that question pressing into everything I thought I knew about loyalty. I told him, I continued, that I needed to be sure. My father leaned forward. Sure of what? I looked directly at Daniel. Sure that it wasn't a mistake. The words hung there, fragile but permanent. Daniel exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath longer than anyone realized. Then, for the first time all night, he didn't look confident. He looked tired. And that's when he asked, barely above a whisper, what happens now? No one else spoke. Not my mother. Not my father. Just Daniel and me sitting across from each other like strangers who knew too much. What happens now? He repeated. His voice didn't sound afraid. It sounded smaller than that. Like someone standing in a room they used to own, realizing it no longer belonged to them. I thought about the bank manager's office. The clean desk. The quiet apology in her eyes. We've removed the loan from your liability, Mr. Monroe. Not will remove. Have removed. I'd walked out of that building lighter but not relieved. Because freedom has a strange weight when it comes from losing someone you thought you understood. The loan isn't mine anymore, I said. My mother blinked. So, it's over? I shook my head once. No. It's just no longer attached to me. Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly. It was subtle but real. He understood. The bank had followed the evidence. The phone. The submission records. The delivery confirmation. The truth had found its way home. My father rubbed his forehead. "We can fix this," he said, but his voice didn't carry the same certainty. Fixing meant undoing something. This couldn't be undone. I reached forward and picked up the police report, folding it carefully. "I didn't come here to destroy you," I said quietly. Daniel finally looked at me again. There was no anger in his face now, just the quiet realization of something ending. "I came here," I finished, "so you wouldn't have to wonder why I stopped being your brother. No one tried to stop me when I stood up." The chair slid back with a soft scrape, louder than it should have been. My mother's eyes followed me, searching for something familiar in my face. An apology. Hesitation. Permission to undo what had already happened. She didn't find it. Daniel stayed seated. His hands rested flat on the table, now empty. No glass. No performance. Just hands that had once borrowed my things without asking because he trusted I wouldn't mind. I realized then, that had been the beginning. Not the loan. Not the car. The quiet assumption that what was mine would always remain available to him. "I never hated you," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. Daniel swallowed, but he didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to negotiate. Outside, the night air felt colder than I expected. Cleaner too. Like something invisible had been cut away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from the bank. Account status, clear. Balance, unaffected. $700,000. Gone from my name. Returned to its rightful owner. I stood there for a moment, staring at the screen, then locked it without reading further. Behind me was the house where I'd spent my entire life being someone's brother. In front of me was the quiet, unfamiliar space of being only myself. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything.